Welcome to TV Free Baltimore's Books and Authors.
Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Books and Authors. Today, our guest has spent 20 years in public service here in the state of Maryland, but we are interviewing him in his role as an author. He has written 3 previous books: Turn This Car Around, America, Hope for Change, and Turning Point. He has a 4th book coming out in just a couple of weeks. We are talking about and talking with today former Maryland Governor Robert Ehrlich. What I want to go into is some of the themes that you bring up, in your books. And the first one, I think, is you talk about a conservative common values majority. And what do you mean by that term?
How much time do we have?
All right, briefly.
Yeah,
we're going to have
that's
maybe
impossible.
An hour, but
it's what elected Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
It's a mindset of, you know what? It's 2017, 2016 then,
Yeah.
18 now.
Yeah.
But there are certain notions that we continue to believe in, and the American dream is one. Mm-hmm. We really want our kids to do better than us. American exceptionalism is another. We know President Obama famously degraded the concept when he said, "Oh, I'm sure the Greeks think Greece and whatever." But America is unique in the history of the world. It's free. It's prosperous. It sheds blood for freedom, not for conquest. This is pretty unique stuff here, and so. Entrepreneurship and making a buck and starting a business. President Obama said, "You didn't build that." Yeah, you did. You built that. Good for you. And we should celebrate it. We need to celebrate success. And for the most part, folks I know who are truly wealthy give back enormous sums, give back enormous percentages of their income. Mitt Romney gave away most of his, in fact, his riches to charities. That's a moral obligation we teach our children. It's part of the American tradition. It's all good. And so these notions of sort of nationalistic notions, entrepreneurship notions, patriotism are notions that became degraded during the progressive era of those 8 years. Donald Trump understood that. In sometimes inarticulate ways, he said, look, we don't need to leave what America is really all about, our foundation. We don't need to redefine ourselves. We need to improve, but we don't need to redefine ourselves. Free speech is still really important, even on college campuses. And we need to get back to this notion of individualism and freedom and liberty, and I'm the guy to do it. Very unpredictable leader in that regard, but someone who, again, appealed to that working class voter, and I'm not even going to get into other issues, all the sexual politics and all that, but people just said enough, too fast,
right?
Not our country, not what we want, and said, we'll choose the outsider,
right?
And that's what happened.
Okay, and then another thing I'll bring up here, because I'm going to hit different themes of yours fairly briefly, but you can talk about as much as you want, is the race-based politics, and part of that is is the thing about African Americans are kind of chastised if they don't vote Democrat.
Well, I saw real racism directed to Mike Steele. I've seen real racism. J.C. Watts, who was in our leadership in the House, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell, black intellectuals on the right. You see it, name a conservative black leader or intellectual or professor, Alan Keyes, whomever, you name it. And they face this. You can't believe that because of the color of your skin. Now, is that right? That is the definition of racism. I literally saw that with Mike, and I read it, and it drove me crazy. And Mike's used to it. I wouldn't accept it. And to the extent we do want to get to this character-based culture, not this color or income or religion or you name the line that we draw culture. We need to not only we need to deny it, to not just deny it, to fight it, to oppose it, to take it down.
Right.
And so that, again, Jack Kemp was all about that. And so this sort of culture of victimization taught on campus these days is just a dead loser. I was at a conference last week, and it was about criminal justice reform, one of my passions, as you know.
Right.
And the speaker said, we have to look at everything through a racial lens. A racial lens? What? I mean, that teaches victimization. College kids are taught to celebrate victimization, and to the extent you're a victim, you're never going to make it because you're always going to have an excuse for not making it. And to me, that is not what the country is all about.
Well, the victimization that you bring up, it brought something to me. It was also mentioned in one of your books, and I'm going to dovetail it with educational reform, is that you talked about, I think, when you were governor, that you made a couple trips to schools in the Baltimore City.
Many.
And that at least one that was in the book was mentioned about about the reading and the teacher.
I was in Congress.
Oh, all right, the teacher.
I'll never forget it. I never forgot. That was, I think, for my second book.
Okay.
A long time, maybe the first.
Okay.
I was at an all-black school, white teacher, young white teacher, and I had, at the time, been going around to schools and promising the kids, or telling the kids, if they would read a certain amount of books certified by their teacher, at the end of the year, they would come to Capitol Hill, and I would meet them and give them a tour, or have a pizza, whatever. And I did that this particular day at this particular school. And the teacher grabbed me on the way out. I was in Congress, and he said, you can't do that with these kids. You're raising false expectations. You shouldn't promise these kids. And my thought, I never forgot the story because, of course, that teacher was the problem.
Right.
His, President Bush called it the soft bigotry of low expectations. That was the definition of the soft bigotry that's hard bigotry in my view, but it was certainly soft expectations. Again, these are victims. We can't expect them to read those books. Give me a break.
Right.
Well, then don't expect them to be successful.
Right.
That's the sort of mindset that I've always opposed. I want to take down. I want to engage in and get in the middle of, and sometimes in very hostile environments, to meet it and to beat it.
Now, I mean, to take it again away from the racial element, I look at your personal story and to say, who would have thought, a working class kid from Arbutus would become governor of Maryland?
Not me.
I'm just saying, you have a father who sold cars on commission.
Yes.
And
which meant some blank months, by the way.
I bet.
Some tough months.
In that apartment on Maiden Choice, I'm sure.
Yeah. Grew up in a very small apartment on Maiden Choice. So, but again, I had great parents.
Right.
Very strong father in my life. I talk about fatherlessness.
Right.
Contributing to the poverty culture
family,
a lot.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and look, you don't even have to have two parents, but particularly young boys need male influences.
Okay.
That's not, somehow that gets interpreted as racism these days. That's insane. That's insane. Daniel Patrick Moynihan 50 years ago, right? Talked about the gradual demise of the black family. Well, guess what? Today it's the brown family, it's the white family, it's all families. Why? In many cases, the demise of fathers in the home.
Right.
So, again, these are things you need to be able to engage in, but I was very lucky. I had great parents, a great community, Arbutus. We're sitting here in Lansdowne today. Every Friday night, Lansdowne High School playing hoops, or Arbutus Middle School at junior high school at the time. Real communities, real little leagues, real parents showing up, and obviously then athletic ability that allowed me to be sort of tapped. That's why I'm so big about scholarships and particularly working class and poor kids getting opportunities through athletics. Leadership through athletics right down the street here.
Exactly.
Love it. Been there numerous times. This is all good stuff, and to me, it's important because it helps define my life. I understand I was lucky. I understand I was fortunate, and I want to pass that fortune on to other kids and other families.
Well, going along with that, with the education, is it? What are some of your other ideas of how to fix problems with education? It's all in the news again about Baltimore City schools.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing when you were governor.
It's the same thing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Just go back in the sun and Google Baltimore City schools. It's the same story. It's the same negligence. It's the same missing tax dollars. It's the same dysfunctional schools. And unfortunately, it's the same product, which means dysfunctional students, which means kids deprived of their constitutional rights. So I tried something novel as governor. I got beat by the Baltimore City Teachers Union and the Black Caucus and the Maryland Democratic Party and Martin O'Malley when Nancy Grassman came to me and said we have these 11 failing schools, the kids aren't getting educated. At Southwestern High School at the time, I believe it was 3% of the kids could pass one of the functional tests. And I said, I'm in. Yeah. Close them, public charter, whatever we have to do, private vendor, let's do it. I'm for all the above. When it comes to kids not getting their constitutional rights, as far as remedies, I'm for all the above. And you know what? They stopped us. And it was a huge fight, well reported. They turned into a race thing, absolutely crazy. And here we are, how many years later? 13 years later? Same stuff. Same schools, same failure. And everybody wrings their hands, and the left runs around, we need more money, and it's crazy, and it's unacceptable.
Why hasn't it changed?
Because the power structure is invested in failure. They're okay with failure as long as they get their money and their jobs.
Because I think you brought that up. It's the battle was saying you're up against the Democratic Party in Baltimore City and the Baltimore Teachers Union.
And the Teachers Union, and the Sun, and the mayor, and race.
And the current mayor, though, is something about she wants to guarantee a college education for kids that finish high school.
College education, well, listen, let's just get first things first, okay?
Okay.
That's reading and writing and arithmetic.
Right, get the basics.
Get the basics. Come on, give me a break. Right. So again, all this stuff in head in the cloud stuff, enough. We failed, and by the way, this is not a discretionary function of government. This is a constitutional right. So to the extent we do not deliver, we're denying these kids their constitutional rights. Right. And it's not just about money. There's plenty of money. But again, so I've become a real education warrior on this. I'm a big supporter of charter schools, residential charter schools, sometimes private vendors. Whatever it happens to be, whether it's vouchers, I don't care. Getting kids out of these environments is priority number one.
All right, now a little bit about crime and your thoughts about, the illegal drug problem and
it's not a new issue. It's directly related.
Same thing.
It's the same. I mean, what happens? I would run around to these suburban audiences and say, by the way, I was trying to get them interested in Baltimore City schools, and I would go to the constitutional route and I go to the moral route where it's immoral to deliver this kind of product to these kids, and then I just go to the real politic route. I'd say, look, if the first two failed, right? I'd say, look, to the extent these kids don't get educated, where do you think the next generation of juvenile delinquents is coming from? If we don't deliver for these kids when they're young, where do you think they're going to go? What's their future? Baltimore City Jail? That makes your community more unsafe. So you really should, I hate this word invest, but it really is, invest in the success of young kids.
Okay.
So that's a very pragmatic argument. I would get some raised eyebrows, but again, Maryland politics, Democratic Party politics, Baltimore City politics beat us.
Now, a few things too. I think about the economy. It was interesting that you brought in, and this is more of a point about the Congress. You said it's the myth of bipartisanism and the politics of yes.
Yeah, the politics of yes is easy. Again, politicians say yes. That's not hard. Going to a bridge opening is easy. I took the taxpayers' money. I built this bridge. Okay. I am great.
Okay.
Right? Okay. That's not hard.
Right.
Trying to get a special session of legislature done to keep doctors in business and getting a tough tort reform bill passed, that's hard.
Yeah.
Getting peace in the Middle East, that's hard. Fighting multi-generational poverty, deep poverty, that's hard. So the politics of yes will get you elected, but again, it does not define you as a leader.
But part of that, though, I guess we're talking about with the bipartisanism issue is to say that you said that each party, at least in Congress, will say, yeah, let's cut these programs, but don't cut mine.
Yeah, that's the old politics 101 dilemma.
Yeah.
And listen, bipartisanship is truly defined as, I see this misused so much,
right,
is if you get Republicans and Democrats who have different philosophical views in a room and they cut a deal and each gets part of what they wanted and they come to yes.
Yeah.
That's bipartisanship. But people say they want bipartisanship, but then they want their congressman or their delegate or their state senator to go to Annapolis or Washington and fight for what they believe in. Right. So sometimes it's very conflicting messages, right? And by the way, just having a philosophical disagreement with a liberal Democrat, that's okay, by the way. That's okay. It's part of what the country's about. We're supposed to dissent and engage and have fights. And look at people talking about, oh, it never used to be. Yes, it was. From the very first day of this country, the Federalists were fighting, Hamilton was fighting, Jefferson, and the role of the federal government and centralized power. They were hiring surrogates to attack one another at that time. If they had Twitter, they'd be using Twitter to attack one another. So it's sort of what freedom and democracy are all about. Dissent doesn't bother me. Dissent without progress bothers me.
Oh, okay. Trying to see if I have something else here about that. But, we're talking about ways you think the economy could be fixed. There were things about...
Well, passing a tax bill.
Yeah. Did you like this new tax
I do.
bill?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, it's funny because, again, bipartisanship. President Obama wanted to cut the corporate tax rate from 35 to 20.
Okay.
Suddenly it became a Republican. I mean, everybody knows that if you have an uncompetitive tax rate and you encourage companies to park their dollars offshore, that's what they'll do. What did this tax bill do? It cut the corporate tax rate. It gave pass-through relief. It brought money. Yesterday, was it Apple? Hundreds of billions of dollars now coming back to our country to be taxed and then used productively in our economy to build factories, to create American jobs. This was not brain surgery. It was always there for the taking, but couldn't get done in the past administration. A huge achievement. Look at the market. The market is not for wealthy people anymore. With the advent of 401ks, it's a very middle class, working class vehicle now.
Right.
The market going from 19,700 to 26,000 in a year. That's the engine of the American economy. That's business people saying, "Hey, we're going to invest in America again."
Yeah.
That's building manufacturing plants in the Midwest. So it's all good in that sense. This unemployment rate is headed toward below 4%. 4% defined as full employment. That's good stuff.
Because I know you had talked about, too, about, I guess, the previous administration had forgotten and penalized people like small business people, entrepreneurs.
You didn't build that. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And celebrate it. And by the way, you also pay your employees who have mortgages. And by the way, you spend a lot of money, tax money to the government. Good for you. We should celebrate you, not degrade you. Where did this come from? This whole idea of class envy, class wealth is, in my view, it's politics, but it's ridiculous.
And along with that, too, you mentioned to help the small business is like a tax-free zone or something?
Well, that was Jack Kemp, Enterprise
You like
Zone,
that, too, yeah.
all that stuff. Look, what you see with the news yesterday is companies are sensitive to tax rates.
Right.
What you saw this past year in the American economy is companies are sensitive to regulation. The Congressional Review Act was passed when we came to Congress, my class. It was used one time prior to this past year. The Congress used it 15 successful times to repeal onerous regulations the first year of the Trump administration.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons, again, business confidence is up. Consumer confidence is up. People are spending. People are consuming. You have announcements on a daily basis about new manufacturing. Well, not so long ago in this country was, we're dead. We can't manufacture stuff anymore. We can't be competitive. Not today.
All right. Now, along with that, entitlements.
A bipartisan failure. We're $20 trillion in debt. I have nothing good to say about
Obamacare and the revision of Obamacare.
Well, huge, many articles in this book, by the way, and the previous book on Obamacare. What a disaster it's been, truly. But with regard to entitlements,
the entitlements, yes.
A lack of interest in both parties in fixing what's really, really wrong. People think about the budget deficits in 20. I'll just leave you with a fact here. 2/3 of government spending is entitlements. So when we talk about budget deficits, we're talking about and spending, domestic spending, and education, defense. That's only 1/3 of the budget. So Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security entitlements take up 2/3 of the budget. That number grows every year. The American people, the taxpayers, are partly to blame here. Nobody wants to fix it. Politicians will respond to no enthusiasm with no enthusiasm. That's the problem.
Because I know you had brought up in your books some possible fixes for
Particularly
that.
Social Security.
Yeah, raising the age.
Retirement age, yeah, slowly makes sense. Encouraging people to go back to, we're living longer, maybe offering people an opportunity to, buy in, buy out Social Security at different ages.
Something about the wealthy, increasing the age for the more wealthy.
Means testing, actually.
Yeah, more means testing.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. Something. The numbers are, and we have to be able to debate this without huge political repercussions. When Paul Ryan a couple years ago even began, President Bush started the conversation. President Clinton wanted to start this conversation with Newt Gingrich. Monica Lewinsky ended that. They were actually meeting to do something about entitlements. So we get literally nowhere with entitlement reform, and we need to start the subject without everybody going crazy.
I mean, not just with entitlements. I think you mentioned maybe regards of other things, budgetary, maybe at the national level, about having a way to make results quantifiable or measurable.
Yeah, I talk a lot about that in my books.
Yeah.
So here's the situation. You have a constituency, you go to the legislature, you get a legislator interested in a particular project or bridge or building or program or bureau. You go through the legislative process, the bill passes, you have this big press conference, everybody tells the politician how great he or she is, and then nobody measures what happened. Did this program work? Now we're on $24 trillion in the Great Society. $24 trillion later. Are inner city schools better? Is life better in our cities? Nobody measures. When Moynihan began to measure this stuff, he was a liberal Democrat,
Right.
and he got destroyed by the left. Nobody wants to measure because I'm reminded of what Vice President Biden said when the Obama stimulus didn't work, that bill, $1.2 trillion. Well, it wasn't big enough. President Obama, when Baltimore burned, well, we don't spend enough. For the left, it's just a little more, always just another buck, just a little further, a little more government, another program, another tax dollar. Without measuring, and I think that does not deliver what the taxpayers deserve.
Because you had brought that up about there's too much government, and if I don't know if it's every agency or every part of the budget, they reduce things by 1/2%.
Well, yeah, when I came in, we faced a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit. So my budget secretary, Chip DiPaula, basically came up, generated a workbook, and told all of our cabinet secretaries that in their next year's budget, they would have to defend any increase. Which,
okay, what?
What?
Now, the other thing, too, I just want a last big issue to touch on, and we can only touch on these issues, unfortunately, so people should read the governor's books, and you'll be well informed, because he does put facts in those books.
Facts are dangerous.
Immigration.
Yeah. What's fascinating to me is as I watch TV, listen to interviews, particularly with these progressives these days, it's as though illegality is a no count. It's as though every argument is about humanitarian values or American values or this sort of emotional stuff where, look, I have great empathy for the so-called dreamers and all that. It's no fault of their own. They're here. We get that. And I think they need to be part of a bill. But the country has to mean something. Borders have to mean something. Sovereignty has to mean something. Open borders is this idea sort of on the progressive left these days that has appeal that needs to be rejected. If you have open borders, you don't have a country, you don't have a culture. You degrade your culture. again, to the extent we want to go back and celebrate the positive parts of American culture, if you're bringing people in who have no appreciation, nor do they want to have an appreciation for your culture, you got a problem. This multiculturalism, as you know, I talk about it in my books.
Talk about multi-ethnicism
We have a
versus
multi-ethnic, multiracial, we have a pluralistic country, and it's to be celebrated. I've gone to every ethnic festival a million times you can think of being a politician. I'm German, I married a Polish girl, we go to German festivals, whatever it happens to be. That's great, but guess what? I don't identify with Germany. That's my family history. That's not my values. It's America. And so the deal here is the social contract has always been, we're going to give you freedom. And by the way, that freedom wasn't always guaranteed. People arrived here on slave ships. But the social contract in the modern era particularly is, we're going to give you freedom and we expect you to assimilate.
Right.
And assimilation means you become part of American culture. And you learn, and in the past this was understood. There were German schools, but they went out of business because people assimilated. And to the extent you teach people it's okay to be separate, or it's okay not to learn English, when English is the foundational language, you got a problem. You're not going to be employed. It's crazy. It's a crazy lesson to teach people. So I think the social contract needs to be revisited in a very real way.
The two things that you brought up that got to me was, one, you talked about the idea of a probationary status for immigrants.
Listen, there's a million good ideas here, and a lot of people write there's not going to be some dragnet for 10, 12, 14 million people. So I don't. There's a lot of good ideas here. There's not one particularly better than the other, but the idea here is some probationary status for people here illegally, to make sure that they do not get automatic citizenship. They have to earn it, and that means you pay your taxes. That means you can do your military service. That means you learn English. That means you do not violate the law. That means whatever conditions we build in, and by the way, a particular length of time. And then you secure your borders.
Right.
You secure your borders. Whether it's a wall in some places, fine. Whether it's some other asset in other places, fine. Whether it's additional border patrol agents in another place, it doesn't need to be a contiguous wall, but it does need to be a secure border. I don't care how you get there. Get there. We deserve that.
Right.
That's the federal government's job. The idea of sanctuary cities, in my view, is insane. Insane. So people need to understand a sanctuary city means we, by definition, will not cooperate with the federal government when it comes to the public safety of our people.
Because I don't know if it was your book or not, but I thought there was a story that I saw, and you can tell me it was in your book or not, about somebody who, I don't know, had committed a criminal act or something, and they went to San Francisco, and since San Francisco was a sanctuary city.
That was the recent, that was the recent murder case out there, Kate Steinle.
That one, right, exactly.
But these and people say, oh, for the most part, these illegal, undocumented folks are not committing crime. Okay, but to the extent anyone is here illegally and they commit crime, or they're here illegally, that is against the law itself. So again, it's this sort of weird argument that the left or the progressives start with. It's all emotionalism. There's not some God-given right wherever you were born that you get to come to America conditionlessly, without conditions.
Right.
And I think I just invented a word, but
that's okay.
And we need to again get back to this idea of the country and the culture and sovereignty means something.
Making America great again?
Well, it's making America lawful again.
Oh, okay.
How about that?
that's a better phrase, maybe. We'll see what the president thinks of that.
We'll see what the president says.
But I think what is interesting to come away from all of this, because I'm getting ready to sum, is that you are a person who welcomes dialogue, dissension,
I do.
And
debate.
Opinions, debate.
Two lawyers married. You should hear our discussions at home. But that's what we're teaching our kids.
Good.
Engage, again, respectfully. Don't back down.
Because that's healthy. Because in this country, everybody wants their point of view and not even listen to the other guy. And this is what happens.
And social media does not help.
Yeah, that's true. Now, of course, the fourth book will be out soon. What else is going on for Bob Ehrlich
A lot. Again,
that we viewers should know about?
King and Spalding is my home base again. Fantastic law firm, the largest in the world, very successful firm.
Okay.
The book means lots of interviews, lots of media, lots of touring, lots of book signings, lots of speeches around the country.
Sure.
That's and again, Villanova spring practice will be up at spring game to watch Drew, and in his redshirt year now, coming off his redshirt year. Josh will be choosing a high school and watching. We don't miss games in the Ehrlich family, as you know. We do not miss games.
No.
Another 3-sport athlete coming, and we will rearrange our schedules for that. Kendall is running drug court in Arundel County. We brought drug courts to Maryland. You may recall, she's living the opioid epidemic. She's also asked to speak quite frequently. She'll be on the road with me. I continue my criminal justice reform efforts. I have a clinic at Catholic University, Columbus School of Law. I never thought at the time that criminal justice reform would be part of my legacy, a major part of my legacy, but it is. I'm asked to give speeches around the country on reentry and opioid crisis and collateral consequences and pardons and commutations and the like. So the Ehrlichs are busy.
I bet they are. And I want to thank you for stopping by to our humble little studio today.
I'm an Arbutus kid, so I'm humble, and it's great to be in Lansdowne.
Thank you, Governor. And also, well, that's the end of this special edition of Books and Authors, and we'll see you next time. And please let us know if there's anybody you think we should have their book reviewed or talk to them about anything they've published. Good day.
You're watching Books and Authors on TV Free Baltimore.